Welcome to Northern Lights. I'm Dwain.
I'm Mark.
I'm Andrew.
And today we're going to ask the question, do WWE fans care about the UFC? So today we've got Cultaholic's very own Andrew. For those who don't know, Andrew and Mark used to be best mates when they were kids.
Many a times down the park, wrestling for the mums and dads.
We used to literally just do that in the park. And there'd be like, sometimes there'd just be a parent there with the child. And we'd just be like braying each other on the swings.
But we used to think like it was like an event, as if they'd come down to see us. Like, oh, it's the third of the month. There'll be Mark and Andrew down there.
They'll be there. Oh, this is the third one. It's like the blow-off now. Triple H, Shawn Michaels going at it down there. The greatest of all time.
We had a big rivalry for a two-person company. We had a big rivalry. And, there's only so much storyline you can have with that, isn't there?
What? I can't even remember what we called it. What did we even call it? It was like Hardcore Championship Wrestling, I think it was.
Let's not go down.
All right, fair enough.
No, I want to know. I want to know the stories, definitely.
It was literally right. It was literally we'd go to our mate Rob's house. I always feel bad about this, Mark, because I feel like I don't want Rob to think we used him for his trampoline, but I'm just saying, we did go round to his house quite a lot, and we just used to go there, and then it was just us two. Sometimes we get other people from school involved, though, didn't we?
Yeah, but I mean, there was a time where he was having dinner with his family, and where their kitchen was looked out to the trampoline, and there's us just wrestling on there. So he's having a family dinner, and there's just me and you suplexing each other.
I still feel so bad to this day.
Dinner and a show. That's brilliant.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Well, Mark always takes the mick out of me because when I was a kid, I used to pretend to be Jeff Hardy. He's my favourite. I used to put my mum's tights over my arms.
Oh. Did you used to cut them as well?
Yeah, he used to cut
them. My God.
Put my thumbs
phenomenal.
And the worst thing was, we had my grandma's house, because we have loads of kids over and stuff. She'd have a big double bed and 2 bunk beds, which is a terrible idea.
Oh, dear.
Used to like frog splash off the bunk bed, and my cousin snapped the double bed in half.
It's bad,
terrible.
Isn't it? It's like if you get a box of celebrations for Christmas, you get the lid and you think, Andrew, I've got a weapon here that we can pull from under the bed. As if it's a chair.
There was so many times where we'd be like, do you know what we'll do? Mark, me and you, B&Q, we'll get loads of pasting tables. We'll use them to like slam each other through. Or like, do you remember when my mum used to go shopping, right? And we'd have like a brief hour window where we could wrestle in the front room.
We genuinely believed that we were just going to get picked up somehow, like as if someone's just going to walk past the window who happens to be a wrestling promoter, look in the window and say, you see him jump off that arm on the sofa?
Boy, good that. Book him, Brock Lesnar next week.
William Regal might walk past. He might find you and think, right, I'm signing them to NXT.
I know.
It was good fun, though.
It was amazing. I genuinely
It was only what, 25, 26, something like that?
27 last year.
Around that time.
Sort of, do WWE fans and UFC fans care about one another at all? I always feel like wrestling and combat sports have been connected for years and years, all the way from Greco-Roman wrestling, Japanese shoot wrestling, UFC 1, Ken Shamrock was there, and even today we have Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey moving between different brands. So Andrew, for you, what do you actually care? Like, say, for example, if there is a UFC star coming to WWE, are you interested? Does that pique your interest more than it normally would?
Not necessarily. Like, I'm not at all, and I'll put this out there now, I'm not at all like a big UFC MMA person in the slightest. However, I think the crossover is definitely there, because when CM Punk left and he went to MMA, it was like, I'm done with wrestling forever. This is like my next thing that I'm going to go into. That's the kind of thing that piques your interest, right? As a wrestling fan, as someone who's followed wrestling and not really combat sports at all, like, to see one of your favorites go over and do something different, do something more in like the realm of, it is the realm of reality, right? It's like wrestling, whilst not necessarily fake, it's choreographed. It's very much choreographed, right? A lot of it. And to see someone try and adapt from that, who's not necessarily had the combat sports background either, is like, that's very intriguing, because you're like, oh, will they actually adapt well to it? And CM Punk, he didn't really adapt well to it. But that's the thing, though. That's the thing that you want to see, and that's what really gets you involved. So I think there's definitely some sort of crossover. I think it does make, and I'm sure it's the same as well for UFC. Like, obviously, yourself and Mark know a lot more about UFC and whatnot than I do, but like, I assume it'd be the same if someone big in UFC decides to try their hand at wrestling, because they're two completely separate. I say they're completely separate entities. I mean, they're very different. They're very different at the cause, aren't they? Really?
There's a link, though, isn't there? There's definitely a link. Like, say what you were saying then about, like, say CM Punk, and you followed it. Brock Lesnar was actually part of the reason I really got into the UFC, because obviously his career in WWE, the first run was very short-lived. It was just less than 2 years, wasn't it? Because he came in after 18 and then he left at 20, didn't he? And, he did a little bit of American football and all that kind of stuff. And when he actually came into the fighting world, that was when I followed it. And, the other people on the card just happened to be other fighters that I had to watch to get to Brock Lesnar, because he was no doubt the main event, because he is a big star, similar to CM Punk. Punk's debut in MMA, it wasn't the main event, but he was on the main card. So it's like the big name does carry with you over there, whether it's, and especially Dwain, what would you say about, like, when Ronda Rousey came to WWE, because obviously she got the big notoriety name, she was the champion, she was so dominant for a while, and then she came back over. Like, as an MMA fan, does that make you tune into wrestling then?
Yeah, for sure, because what I always found interesting is when she came off all these losses from UFC, and everyone sort of started talking about, oh, would WWE sign them? Like, even Coach, he said WWE are not interested in signing losers. And then she literally came like the week after. You think, oh, so that's embarrassing. And then, I think it does pique your interest nonetheless. Whether you're a big, huge wrestling fan, if you find out Ronda Rousey, probably the most famous female UFC fighter in the world, if probably not the second biggest UFC fighter in the world, that's going to pique your interest. And she's obviously done really well there. I think her promos are pretty crud, to be honest. I think they're really bad. What she needs a Paul Heyman. I think she needs someone like that with her side. But her wrestling is actually fantastic. I was like, wow, she's really good. It's very believable, very sellable. So yeah, it does pique my interest quite a lot. But then
the WrestleMania, her debut, when she was in that tag match with Angle and Triple H and Steph, I tuned in because I don't really watch wrestling so much anymore, but I'll always tune in for the big ones, Rumble and Mania and all that kind of stuff. I watched that and I was sat like, it looks like she's been in wrestling well for a long time. She was really good. I was like, because usually there's a bit, I don't know, sometimes have you ever seen them where, they sort of come over? Similar to Andrew, actually, this would be interesting. Did you care at all when Rey Mysterio brought Cain Velasquez out with him to fight Brock Lesnar?
So this is the thing, right? And initially, no. Well, part of me was actually, no, scrap that. Initially, yes, I was, because Cain Velasquez in Mexico did a lot of lucha libre style stuff, and he was pulling off Hurricane Ranas and doing all sorts. Like, this bigger guy who you kind of wouldn't have imagined doing stuff like that. So I was like, oh my God, you're going to bring him in and do stuff like that? Absolutely. Brock Lesnar works. I think Brock Lesnar works so well with someone when their styles clash in terms of wrestling. He works so well with, like, the smaller guys, with the luchadors, and thinking like, oh, if we get an actual wrestling match out of this, that'll be quite good, because then you've got Cain Velasquez kind of taking Brock Lesnar to his limits in sort of a field that Brock Lesnar kind of dominated very early on in the days anyway, right? So I was like, that'd be intriguing. But then for them to be like, oh, we're kind of turning it into a bit of like an MMA type UFC thing.
Yeah, it was like, oh, strange one, that, wasn't it? I mean, Dwain, you always made me laugh. Like,
well, when Cain debuted, I wasn't excited because I thought Dominic Mysterio had shaved his head.
No way!
I thought, why is Dom shaved his head? He's looking pretty beefy, though. He's looking a beefy boy. And I was like, oh, that's not him. It's Cain Velasquez. Because why would I know? Because he's so tall. I thought, well, that's his son.
Well, they had the built-in storyline with that, though. I remember because Paul Heyman was still Brock's advocate at the time, wasn't he? He was saying, you see this scar on his face? That was done by... Because I don't know if you would have caught the fight, Andrew, when it did actually happen, but Velasquez battered Lesnar in the first round. Like to a pulp, and he won the title off him. So he had that built-in storyline, but in the wrestling world and the realm of wrestling, I didn't think it delivered that particular storyline. Just in the sense of I've got a sort of theory that you can't choreograph real punches, if that makes any sense whatsoever, as a wrestling fan and someone who grew up watching Stone Cold, whose entire moveset was punches and kicks.
Luther's press, best move in the business.
When he came over and it kind of took Brock down, and then he's giving it all the. It's like when they tried doing Raw Underground. For me,
that was bad. That was bad as well.
I agree. I think the big issue with Cain, like you said, because when I first heard that he was coming to wrestling, I went and watched some of his stuff in Mexico, and he was hanging out with some of the Bullet Club and AEW guys over there and stuff. And it was really interesting. And he fought like a lucha, he was doing all these flips and stuff. And like you said, when they just took him down and got him in an armbar, I think, okay, you've wasted all of this potential, just thrown away. And it could have been so exciting. Imagine if Cain Velasquez was just doing all these flips and stuff and things like that. That'd have been so exciting.
That would have blown the mind of people, right? When you see a big guy doing stuff like that, it completely just flips everything upside down in what you know. Usually in wrestling, it is the smaller guys that do all the flips and stuff, right? Yeah. And then when you get a bigger guy that does that, like Lance Archer and stuff in AEW as well, just pulling off moonsaults, doing all sorts of things, and you're like, oh my god, that really pulls you in, because then that kind of shifts your expectation of what sort of bigger people in wrestling can do. And then to see, if Cain Velasquez would have come in and done all that sort of stuff on a huge stage like WWE in front of millions and millions of people, I think that would have been a really special thing. But it just turned out not. That match was a dud. It was
just dire. And speaking of, it's not necessarily MMA, but around the realms of combat sports. If I'm not mistaken, that was the same night as Braun Strowman and Tyson Fury.
Yep.
Now, for me, I'm not a big boxing fan, but we were saying Ronda can't cut a promo. Tyson Fury's was when he snapped a pen. It's like when the class clown at school tries to act up. I was like, this isn't doing it any favors. But the issue is I used to live with my friends were big boxing fans, so they'd tune in to watch that, because exactly like we were saying earlier, it piques your interest.
Yeah.
When someone's someone that you like transfers, so they'd watched it and they were like, this is terrible. But do you remember, Dwayne? We were speaking about this, and Andrew, you'll get this as well. Tyson Fury went for a cover over Braun Strowman. He went to pin him, and Michael Cole on commentary said, "He's hooking the leg. Great technique there by Tyson Fury." It's the equivalent of saying he's going to punch him. He's made a clenched fist. That's a great technique there.
Hey, if you don't hook the leg, put all your momentum in it, put the weight down. That's good. That is great technique, Mark. I'll tell you, Michael Cole was on the money there, right? Michael Cole was on the money. I'll tell you something as well, right? At the end, where Strowman does his finish with the big slam, Tyson Fury straight up, don't even sell it, gets up, starts shouting at him afterwards. At least have a little bit of respect, right? Have a little bit of respect. But he just got up and no-sold it.
I'll tell you what he did sell, though. He sold him when he was training, and Braun Strowman came in and ran him down, and he twisted his ankle. And then his mate, there was everyone round going, there was no need for that. Get him out of it.
There's no need for that.
Yeah, no. Let's have a brew.
But that's the thing with Tyson Fury, when he went for the first pin, he actually didn't cover the leg, he didn't take the leg. And so that's why they tried to adjust it and go, oh, he's doing it correctly now and things.
Yeah.
You must be able to know that he couldn't even run the ropes. You've got to learn how to do, at least get the fundamentals down. But I will give him credit, like when he was doing the promos and stuff, like outside of WWE, he did give it a lot of respect. I remember someone said to him, "Oh, is it fake over there?" No, it's real. So, I'm fighting. And at least he gave it that respect in the sense of, it's still real to me. Damn it, that kind of
that guy.
Yeah,
there's still that. I feel like even though it was like a bit of a showcase, because that Tyson Fury wasn't exactly going to give up his boxing career and let's make a run of WWE. So you get that it was like a one-night thing. But when it doesn't look great, and it's not like his fault because he just isn't trained in it, but you just feel like it's not really doing it justice, But again, it's not really a new thing, though, is it? This sort of transition, this crossover. But we was going to talk about. You're into AEW as well, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
When we was talking about like American Top Team turning up, and there was Jorge Masvidal, Paige Van Zandt, Junior Dos Santos, and there was it was Jericho in the ring, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
they sold Masvidal's running flying knee as if it was like a finisher. Did you rate that? Like, did you watch the Ben Askren fight? I mean, if you got a spare 5 seconds, have a watch of that.
Is that the one where the fella just runs up and just literally knees him in head and then it's over?
That's
is that the one?
Yeah.
Because I saw that the other day and I didn't even realize, but before then, when I had no idea who he was, then I was like, oh, that's all right. I don't like Jericho now anyway. So anything with him getting his head kicked in, I'm all for it. I want to see that happen. I don't think they've utilized really any of the UFC MMA people in American Top Team. Paige Van Zandt obviously now has a contract, and she's hopefully going to be showcased a little bit more. See what she can do. But again, we've seen some of them pop up, and they're only in there for like brief segments. Either it's just to beat someone down or cause a distraction. So they haven't really been utilized in a way that would make me interested in going to check them out in what their field is, if you know what I mean.
I agree for sure. I think when Jorge Masvidal came out and he did this running knee, when you've got Kenny Omega on the same show doing a V-trigger, which is the exact same move, it just looks terrible in comparison. Not Kenny Omega, Jorge Masvidal. His running knee just looks so fake. It looks so sad because he doesn't know what he's doing. And it just, if you're not going to sell it, why would I care? Why is anyone going to tune in for that? And I feel like you're right. Like, they've not capitalized on this. Like, Jorge Masvidal was, he's one of the biggest UFC stars in the world.
Yeah.
Do something with that. Don't just have him on Dynamite on a Tuesday night, just battering someone. Get him on your big pay-per-view. Do something with that. And
I mean, there's a big difference in sort of the sports entertainment wrestling aspect of stuff and the UFC stuff, right? In comparison to, I guess, like the Kenny Omega, he knows how to work a camera. He knows how to make a move like a knee sound incredible with obviously like the slaps on the thighs and everything. Not that they do that, it's real. When it connects
it's real.
It makes that noise.
It
makes that noise, right? He obviously has been honing his craft for a long time and knows just how things look on camera. And that's not to say that anybody from UFC coming in doesn't do that. I just think there's a learning curve, right? There's a way to there's different ways to sort of present yourself, because I assume in MMA and UFC, you don't really have to think about necessarily playing to the cameras or making things look as devastating as possible. As long as you can get the job done. Then I guess you're right? As long as you get the win and whatnot. But I guess within wrestling, because it's entertainment, you've got to make it look as devastating as possible to really sell what's going on. Yeah,
for sure. And then when you're comparing it to great sellers and great wrestlers, it looks even worse, doesn't it? If for example, that it wasn't that good a night, there wasn't all these good wrestlers, Jorge probably would have looked pretty good. But like when you compare it to that, it does look bad. But sort of talking about sort of the entertainment factor in UFC, did you see that Israel Adesanya came out at UFC 276 as the Undertaker? Did you see his entrance?
I didn't.
Yeah,
that sounds amazing though.
And Vince McMahon,
that urn you've got behind you.
With real Undertaker.
He was fighting a guy called Jared Cannonier, and he came out with the urn, the hat, the music, and he had Jared wrote on it. Because I don't know if I think he's a bit of a fan, but There was Vince, Steph, Triple H, and Pat McAfee. They were in the crowd.
I saw the picture.
So
yeah,
he just came down, dead man, took it off and all that. I
awesome.
don't know if we got a throat slash or not.
Oh.
I can't remember, but
did we get a pile driver or a last ride in the match?
Just a joke.
that would have been fantastic, but it was the most boring main event for a long time.
Not a casket was seen.
The most interesting thing about 276 was the entrance. The actual fight itself was pretty dogger. It wasn't very good. But you know, there is that big sort of entertainment value of UFC, because I remember when I first got into UFC, my uncle told me, he said, "Oh, it's like wrestling, but real." I was like, cage match every week. Go on then. You know, and that's how it got sold to me. You got like Chuck Liddell fighting and Tito Ortiz, and like, you know, they're fighting. I'm like, is he going to pin him now? Oh no, he's just going to keep hitting him in the face.
Cave his head in.
Well, it was like, I thought that almost exact same thing, Dwayne. Like when I was younger and I started watching a little bit of UFC because people was into it, I thought, this is boring at the time because it's just punches and kicks. It's like when, you know, like the old arcade games where that's all you can do.
Yeah.
It was like watching one of them live, like a live stream of a 1989 console. But then, like, you know, I'm thinking, well, there's ladder matches and there's, you know, the table matches and stuff in wrestling. So why would I not go to that? You know, they've got storylines in there and all this kind of stuff. But just at first glance, it really didn't pick up on me at the time. But way back when I got into wrestling, you've got Stone Cold with a beer truck and all that kind of stuff. That appealed to me massively.
I mean, I feel like perhaps if I actually give it a chance, I probably would enjoy it, because it sort of reminds me of, you know, when back in the day, when we'd watch like technical wrestling, when we were kids and we see like a technical wrestling match, I feel like the majority of us were just like, this is boring. Like, I can't appreciate what's going on and like the actual talent that's going into pulling all this off, like really fluidly and whatnot. Like, I feel like if I went and actually watched UFC properly now, I could probably appreciate it for little nuances and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you're saying, like if I watched a William Regal fight when I was a kid, like he's probably one of the most technical wrestlers ever. He's fantastic. But I was just waiting for him to get the knuckle duster out. That's all I cared about. Like, quick, whack him in the head.
Yeah,
but you know,
that's the thing. It's WrestleMania 12 with Brett and Shawn, the Iron Man match. The first 20 minutes of that I saw is literally just ground fighting. Yeah. It's ground wrestling, you know, it's like Olympic style sort of thing. But exactly like you're saying then, Dwayne, with William Regal, you're waiting for a sharpshooter or a super kick. Yeah. That's what you want in the wrestling world, isn't it?
And that's it. And that's why I think I probably would, if I like actually sat down and really got into the weeds of it, I think I'd appreciate it a lot more than I think I do now, at least anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like UFC really does have that entertainment factor with it. You know, still now you've got like Conor McGregor and Chael Sonnen and Colby Covington really sort of pushing these sort of wrestling personas almost, and these big gimmicks, and they're really pushing their, you know, their own promos and stuff. A really good one to watch is Brock Lesnar when he's going to fight Daniel Cormier. They don't actually fight. The fight got cancelled because Brock was basically using the UFC as leverage to get a bigger contract with Vince, so he got a big wad of cash for that. But he came out and like, Daniel Cormier just won the title, and he went, and there's only one guy I want to fight, Brock Lesnar, and Brock came out, pushed him over, and he was fighting, pushing all the refs out of the way and stuff. It felt like a WWE match, you know. It felt like they were going to start fighting. I thought he was going to bring Money in the Bank, you know.
his little boombox briefcase, like dancing away.
I wonder if WWE and UFC are going to do more of that sort of crossover a little bit here, because like, say when Austin Theory won Money in the Bank, you know, and all these wrestling guys were there at UFC 206 the same night. Have Austin Theory there with the briefcase, you know, like pointing at the champs and stuff. Play it up a little bit, do something with it, because it feels like that world's so interconnected in some ways. I can't wait for the day that I see a wrestling guy come in and have the WWE belt in UFC. I think that'd be so exciting. It'd be so fun.
There's a lot. There's a lot of business opportunity, a lot of crossover there, right? There's a lot of money to be made if you did do something like that. And I'm not sure if I'm right in thinking this, but I'm pretty sure they'll have brought, like, when Triple H or Vince or someone goes, they usually take a belt with them, don't they? And then pose with people and whatnot to kind of get that cross promotion and stuff in there. But I agree. I think something like that would be really good, especially if you're starting in WWE. If you are starting to build new stars, and now with the sort of the news that maybe we're going towards PG-14 or TV-14 stuff on Monday Night Raw, maybe there is a chance to get some more sort of aggressive crossover, some sort of stuff that looks a little bit more real, maybe a little bit more, choreographed violence, I guess.
Yeah.
Things like that. I think that could be a really good thing to do. Actually, I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Well, I was real excited about the TV-14 announcement, and I know it's not going to exactly change overnight.
Yeah.
But just in the sense of this is my chance to maybe tune in again and maybe become a fan again. Just because I'm not gonna sit and talk about why I'm not into it, but it just doesn't speak to me anymore. The current product, but potentially like you were both just saying then about the crossover sort of thing, it does pique my interest. Now I'll tune back in, and like this year, me and Dwain, we watched WrestleMania. Because there are a few plucks on the old nostalgia string. Again, Stone Cold. I do know more than just one wrestler, by the way. I feel like I've mentioned him about 4 times.
I'm not sure.
I don't think you do. I think you only know Stone Cold.
but there's there were that involved, and there was the there were just all sorts of all right, good matches. There was Lesnar in there as well, and all that. And it's always good fun whenever Lesnar's on for me. But I mean, the crossover in general, it's not like a brand new thing. It's just obviously in the world of social media, everything's a lot more apparent, and you've got news at the tips of your fingertips. But you look at like we were saying earlier, UFC 1, you've got Ken Shamrock. There were even Dan the Beast 7, if you remember him from the Attitude Era. There's all that kind of stuff. It all goes on, and then it's still going on now. But one thing that I was actually going to ask you, Andrew, I'm not sure if you know someone called Alistair Overeem.
Yes, yeah.
He actually beat Lesnar in UFC.
Really?
But he's been this was after the diverticulitis that Brock Lesnar had. But I mean, maybe I'm just making excuses because I really like Brock. But he was panning wrestling for a good while. And
he was going to do that Wes. He was going to do, I keep calling it Wes, WES. And it's just about that, isn't it? That's all it's about.
Cancelled, right? It's all been cancelled, and
it's all been cancelled. They booked out the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham, which is a 10,000 seat arena. So already on your first wrestling show, I think that's overshooting slightly in a new company that's getting started up. That's going to have fantastic wrestling people like the authors of Pain and the former Braun Strowman and Nia Jax, it's not something that's going to draw 10,000 people. And I think that's my honest opinion, at least anyway. I think you were very much overshooting. You got fantastic people there though, like Lindsay Dorado was going to be there. Matt Rewalt, who was going to do commentary and everything. But yeah, that must have just been about money. He must have been promised something after trashing wrestling for so long. I can't imagine it was anything other than money that sort of reeled him in there.
But I often wonder when these UFC guys, when they're trashing wrestling, I wonder, are they actually trashing it, or is it part of like a promo? Is it say Conor McGregor, at WrestleMania, he starts talking about John Cena and stuff, and then he's putting on Twitter, I'm not WrestleMania tonight because they're all afraid of me and things like that. And Colby Covington, they interviewed him in the store. Would you go to AEW? And he said, you'd never see me in a second tier promotion like that. I'll only go to WWE. So I feel like, is it a gimmick? Are they sort of going, when I finish UFC, there is this pathway forming. I wonder if they're building that up rather than actually trashing on the sport.
I think some of them are. Absolutely. I think you're right. I think some of them are. Alistair Overeem, though, it very much felt real. It very much felt like he did not like wrestling in the slightest.
It definitely was real. And for a guy who's been absolutely trashing it for so long, it's the very same guy who was getting his ass kicked for multiple fights in his last few in the UFC. But it feels so, pardon the term, fake in the sense of how he was, trashing it for a long time. And then all of a sudden he's thinking, oh, actually, there is actually a bit of money. I'm at the end of my fighting career, or this is coming over. I'm like over this now. So maybe I can actually transition. It just felt so forced, and you're a bit like, no, you've seen your real side now. Don't bother. And especially like, was he supposed to be the main event?
I think so, yeah. It was him and Braun Strowman, I'm pretty
What's
sure.
Braun Strowman's new name? I forgot.
Adam Scherr.
Oh, okay.
Which is
that
his real name. That's his real name, yeah.
It's not quite as cool as Braun Strowman,
No,
is it?
Not really.
But with talking of Alistair Overeem and fighting wrestling stars, is there any wrestling stars you'd like to see go over to UFC? Like, Shinsuke Nakamura, he's got an MMA career. Right? That'd be quite interesting, seeing something like that happen.
I'll tell you, I'd love to see Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens is my favorite wrestler. I would love to see Kevin Owens fight.
I think he'd be so funny.
Yeah, it would be good, but he probably would get beaten up.
Without a doubt, absolutely. Other ones, do you know what? I'd like to see I want to see what some of the bigger guys would do. And Omos isn't really doing it for me on the main roster at all, right? I want to see what a guy that size would be like in an actual proper fight. Because that would be quite interesting.
He might not actually be able to make the weight. Because what's the upper limit? The weight limit for heavyweight? 265 pounds.
Yeah.
That's the big problem. These big giant guys, they can't actually fight because there's not a super heavyweight division. They can do catch weight fights and stuff, but to be competitive, they couldn't really do it. But someone maybe like Keith Lee would be quite good. I'd like to see Keith Lee have a go. Because he's scary. Like
he's very scary. And I feel like if he got you down, if he got you in like just on the ground, you wouldn't be getting back up from that. No, not a chance.
It'd be like Roland Nelson or Mark Hunt. It'd be like that kind of fight.
Yeah.
Some big beefy guy. Who would you like to see go, Mark, if you'd see any wrestlers now going to the UFC?
To be honest, when you were saying like Kevin Owens and stuff, I think they do well in like the Tank Abbott days, the UFC days where it was just stand and bang. It wasn't really like, as technical as what it is now. But now, I'd quite like to see, I know we might be a bit past it, but Dolph Ziggler. I'd quite like to see what he can do.
Oh, that's
he's an amateur wrestler, isn't he?
It'd be quite interesting. I mean, there's a few of them that actually do that kind of goes under the radar a little bit. Like Matt Riddle.
Yeah.
He has Bobby Lashley did.
Yeah, he did.
It wasn't in UFC, it was a different promotion. But Matt Riddle, he was in there as well, wasn't he?
Well, there's someone like Jake Hager who's actively in both. He's both in MMA and AEW. And like they had all the inner circle there at his last fight and stuff. You think, they're really trying to build that, and it's really good. But there's only one real wrestler I want to see, and that's Shane McMahon, because he always talks about he always talks about, I'm joking, obviously, but he always talks about, I've trained in MMA and this is why I do all these punches and stuff. You think, how embarrassing. And just see him get battered by someone would be brilliant,
I think it'd be the CM Punk 2.
Yeah. I love it. He climbs up the cage and does the coast to coast.
That'd be sick. What if he does?
Someone else actually thinking about it, when you were talking about just like straight fighting, Eddie Kingston, man. Like Eddie Kingston, I think it'd be phenomenal in a situation like that. I think he'd fight or flight. It'd be amazing.
He'd wear his vest though in the UFC. You think he'd wear it? Who would you want to see go the other way? What UFC fighters, is there any that interest you think, I'd love to see them in WWE or AEW?
I genuinely, because I don't know that much about them, I'm going to leave this question up to you. Because that's not my field. So I'm not really sure about that. What about you, Mark? Who would you go for?
I'm not sure if you'll know him, Andrew. If not, I'll send you a link. But Chael Sonnen, the undisputed, undefeated best, is honestly, Andrew, he's retired now, but his promos in like the noughties and stuff, it is straight from WWE. It is Ric Flair-esque. It is so good. I'll send you a link of his compilation videos, and that is so quick-witted and everything. So he'd fit right. It'd be literally like a duck to water. He would fit right in so well, and he really respects it as well. He used to have what did he say, Dwayne, when he said doing a promo, and he says some people have them bracelets. What would Jesus do? I've got a different saying, man's. What would Stone Cold Steve Austin do? Again, the Stone Cold. Again, another Austin reference. But
well,
what about you, Dwayne?
for me, it would be Michael Chandler. I would love to see him step foot in WWE because he's Ric Flair in UFC right now. He does the woo. He even does the gimmick. He said, "Look, if you're going to beat anyone, Khabib, come beat me." You know, and he steals Ric Flair's promos. But there's so many guys like that. There's like Daniel Cormier. He's even like once when he was doing an interview, his phone went off. And it was Glorious was playing as his ringtone and things.
Oh, amazing.
So there's all these big UFC guys who love WWE, and I'd love to see like Colby Covington. I think the big one though is Conor McGregor, isn't there? I think a lot of, if he was at WrestleMania, I think that'd be a real big boost for him and for WWE. And I think there's a lot of interest in that because he seems interested. The WWE seems interested. But I don't know who he'd probably fight. He'd have to fight a smaller guy because he's only like 5'9". So if you put him up against Brock Lesnar, he's going to look tiny. So maybe someone like Finn Balor or AJ Styles, someone who can sort of show him a really talented wrestler who can guide him through it. I think that's what he needs.
I think the way that it's going right now is we are getting a hell of a lot more of a crossover. Like we say, it's always been there, but it's a lot more apparent, like we've been saying. And you never know, like with people thinking, not in a disrespectful way, people thinking that the wrestling world might be more accessible when they get to the later stages of the career or something like that. It's more welcomed now, I think. And you do get the diehard UFC fans who absolutely refuse that there is any sort of crossover, but we all know that there is a link there. Something, there's evidence everywhere, isn't there? And I think you're going to get a lot more crossovers in the very near future, like very soon, I think.
For sure. I think that's all we've got time though. If everyone can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help us out. And thank you for listening.